Okay, at this point, we do need to reconvene our 9 a.m. meeting to come out of executive session. For those of you that are here for the land use meeting, don't worry, we'll conclude this fairly quickly. All right, so at this point, I would like to entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
I move to come out of executive session.
Second.
And that's been moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. We are now out of executive session and seeing no further business before this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair?
My apologies. Yes, please we have a comment from the county attorney.
Thank you, sir. I'll make it fast. The board is exiting executive session where a discussion was had, but no decisions were made.
Okay, now seeing no further business before the board, this meeting is adjourned. And we need a couple minutes for the clerk to switch over, and then we'll get started in our land use hearing. All right, we are now ready to proceed for our Tuesday, November 1st, 1 p.m. land use meeting. I appreciate everybody's patience. We had a executive session and a longer meeting this morning. It just got us a few minutes behind schedule. Our first order of business is to call this meeting to order, and we do have all 5 commissioners present. And then if everyone will indulge me to take item number 1 and number 2 out of order and start with item number 2, because we do have a few changes to the agenda.
Item number 2 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. Mr. Chair, it's my understanding we have a request to continue item number 6 to a date certain of December 6, 2022, and that will require a motion.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And before we take the vote, if I could just ask if there's anybody in the audience that, knowing that item number 6 was on this agenda today, if you came here to speak either for or against agenda item number 6, because if you were here, we wanted to give you an opportunity to speak. Okay, very good. So I do see 3 people here, and there may be others. I see you pointing. There might be some others. Okay. So what I would like to do is, again, before we take the vote, just to let you know, we'll proceed through a vote on item number 6. But if you were here for item number 6, we do not want to cause you a challenge about having to come back, although you're more than welcome to come back on December 6th. But if you wanted to have an opportunity to testify as a member of the public or an interested party on item number 6, we will take that testimony today because you're here. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
May
please.
I offer a clarification? I think with the continuance of number 6, I think what we would be looking at is input on the fact of it being continued and moved to another date, but not substantively hearing comments on that matter.
Thank you. Is there anybody that would like to come forward about continuance of item number 6 to December 6th? Feel free to come down if you'd like.
Hi, I'm Jill Fowler. I'm just trying to understand what the reason is for the continuance so that I know what I'm trying to speak to.
Great, thank you. And maybe Mr. Waters or maybe, or the county attorney, if you could give the reason for that.
Yes, I'd be happy to do so. My understanding is the individual, Mr., I don't know if I'll say this, Rowell, has requested the continuance to seek a little more input from staff and clarification on the hearing proceedings. It is his request to move it to December 6th.
So I'm really confused because we walked in here today with an agreement about how we were going to proceed, and that was going to affect whether or not I oppose the special use or whether or not I was going to be supportive of moving forward. So I'm kind of in a bind because I don't know what I'm addressing here.
Yeah, my understanding is that the proposal on the floor is for the entire hearing to move to the 6th, so you'll still have that opportunity to either oppose or support or whatever you'd like. I think it's just simply giving the gentleman who requested it more time to be familiar with the proceedings and be prepared, is my understanding. And if staff would like to comment or clarify, I'm happy to have staff come up and discuss this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Justin Kilgore, Planning Manager for Planning and Community Development. Mr. Rowell had asked for the continuance. He's gotten some, he's been working to get some, sorry, sir. I apologize.
Yeah, that's better.
He's gotten some different information. He wants to make sure that he has all of his ducks in the row, so to speak, before he makes a presentation to the board. For this, he's been working for some time on this case, and it has multiple facets, and he just wants to make sure he has everything in order before he makes a presentation.
Okay, thank you. The applicant does have the right to request a continuance, and then we can vote on that, but it does sound like maybe there would be an opportunity for those involved in this item to maybe have a quick conversation as well to find out you know, if there might be objection based on some additional findings that the applicant has, which I think is why the applicant has requested additional time. So, yes, sir, if you could come down, if you'd like to ask additional questions. Thank you. And when you come down, just sign in, state your name, and then you can go ahead and ask those questions.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is David Ellis, representing the Canterbury Improvement Association, the HOA, of properties totaling more than a square mile in northern El Paso County, and some of the properties are adjacent to Mr. Rails. I've been to multiple hearings in this process, and I'm just a volunteer, so I would like to provide to you my 3-minute presentation today, so I don't have to come back next month.
Mr. Chair, could I interject again?
Yes, please.
Because the matter before the board right now is whether or not the entire hearing will be continued, I don't think that it's appropriate to get into the substance of the objection. I certainly understand that you're here today, sir, but I have process concerns with really getting into that before the board decides whether or not the matter will be continued and heard later. It sounded to me like some circumstances may change for a later hearing if this is actually continued. Am I making sense?
Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
My question would be, although I understand it may not be used for decision-making purposes on December 6th, could he also give his comments during public comment if he desired so?
If he desired so, I believe that he could. There aren't really any limits on the purview of what's covered at public comment. I would leave that to the citizen comment, making comment.
So great. To make sure that that might be clear to you, sir, if you look at the agenda, item number 3, which is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda, if we were to vote to continue this to December 6th, it would be removed from the agenda. So you would have, under item number 3, 3 minutes to make any comments you wish to make on any topic, to include this topic. Yes, Commissioner Geithner.
I'd just like clarification, Mr. Chair, and from our county attorney. Though I have no objection, obviously anyone can speak during their 3 minutes. I did want to clarify for myself and also for anyone who may want to speak. If they make their presentation during public comment, that cannot be considered for the hearing. It would actually have to be a part of the future hearing in order to use that information for us to consider in that deliberation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I just want you to be clear. So even if you make those statements today and this comes back, if those statements are not made during that particular hearing, we cannot consider that information for that hearing decision. And I just want to make sure that that's clear so everyone has an opportunity to have their comments, be considered for that hearing purpose.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. I may be here at the December 6th hearing on a completely different matter, and I would like to use the item 3 time to basically familiarize you with this situation today, which is being postponed. But I'm prepared, and if you wouldn't mind 3 minutes of your time, I'll take it a little later.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate Commissioner Geithner, the clarification for the citizen to make sure that they know that the only testimony that will be considered for item 6 will be testimony that's provided on December 6th, on the continuation date, should the commissioners vote to move it forward. All right, thank you for that clarification. I don't know if maybe the applicant would like to come up and just make a comment about the request to postpone as well, but you don't need to if you don't wish to do so, but we'll just give you an opportunity as well.
Chairman, board members, I'm Steve Rael. I'm the owner of the property and the little private RV lot and the continuance. I've just had so much information from different sources, from different professionals, that I'm just really not sure how I should proceed. So I've been advised. I talked with Jordan over here, and I talked with Carrie, and just think I should wait and get everything else, get all the facts in order and my rights in order, and to then proceed with the December 6th presentation for the special use permit.
Great. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, so we have a matter before the board to consider item number 6 for postponement to a date certain for December 6th, and I'll entertain a motion at this point.
I would move that we postpone item number 6 to a date certain of December 6th.
Second.
And that's been moved and seconded, and are there any other questions or comments from any of the commissioners? All right, seeing none, let's proceed with the vote. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. Item number 6 is now moved to a future date, December 6th. And we will get to item number 3 in a moment, sir, but right now we have item number 1.
Item number 1 is staff emergency items, and there is a request for an emergency item. It's an annexation impact report for the town of Monument. A request by the town of Monument for acceptance of annexation petition and annexation plat for the Monument Ridge East and West annexation. The 160-acre parcels are zoned RR5 residential rural and RS 20,000 residential suburban, PUD planned unit development, C1 commercial, CS commercial service, and CC commercial community, and is located south of and abutting County Line Road between Beacon Light Road on the west and Misty Acres Boulevard on the east, and within Section 11, Township 11 south, Range 67 west of the 6 p.m. parcel number 71022-00015, 014, 013, 009, 008, 71022-01001, 71022-00006, and 010. Commissioner District Number 1, Kylie Bagley, Planner 2, Planning and Community Development. Jeff Rice, Senior Engineer, Planning and Community Development.
All right. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I just want to let you know the reasoning for the emergency on this Annex 22008. This report is going to be, or this item is going to be heard by the Town of Monument on November 7th, so this was our opportunity to get it before the board. Ms. Bagley and Mr. Rice have a presentation for you all, if the chair will entertain that now.
Yes, I'll entertain those presentations. And for the county attorney, while this is an emergency item, it is a land use item, so we have the procedures that we would follow under those cases.
Yes, sir, we do. Would you like me to speak to those real quickly, or?
No, I think I've got them right here, so, but please correct me if I do something out of turn. Thank you very much. All right, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kylie Bagley, Planner 2 with El Paso County. We also have Jeff Rice, who was the engineer for this project file, which is Annex 22008. It's titled Monument Ridge East and West Annexation from the Town of Monument. So in front of you is a request from the Town of Monument for an annexation petition and plat for approximately 160 acres. The 160-acre parcels have multiple zoning districts. They are zoned RR5, residential rural, RS 20,000, residential suburban, PUD, planned unit development, C1, commercial, CS, commercial service, and CC, commercial community. Again, it's located south of and abutting County Line Road between Beacon Light Road on the west and Misty Acres Boulevard on the east. So here's just the standards for review for an annexation impact report. I won't go ahead and read it all for you unless you would like me to at this time, or the county attorney can read it in if we feel that's necessary.
Miss Seago is on her way down.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Lori Seago, Senior Assistant County Attorney. The items on the screen before you are the evaluation criteria for the annexation impact reports that are provided to you for your consideration, and they are as follows. Whether the municipality has made adequate provision for the requisite level of utility services to the area, whether it has made adequate provisions for the requisite level of police and fire protection, whether the proposed annexation will encourage growth patterns which are inconsistent with the master plan, either in terms of the type of land use or the timing of such growth, whether the proposed annexation will create unreasonable roadway maintenance and drainage problems. Is there more? Whether the proposed annexation has unreasonable detrimental impacts upon land adjoining the area proposed to be annexed in terms of land use compatibility, timing of growth, or other development-related concerns, whether the annexation will create county enclaves within the municipality which have little or no possibility of future annexation by the municipality, and whether the annexation will remove land from an existing special district to the extent that the provision of service by that district to the rest or the remainder of the district is no longer financially feasible. And again, just as a reminder, the action that you take today will not be to approve or deny the annexation impact report, but whether you accept it or whether you would like to forward written comments to the town on the report.
And Ms. Seago, does that mean in this particular case there is no vote going forward, or it's just acceptance, or do we vote to accept?
I think typically they would vote, right? Okay. I think in the past we have typically asked you to vote whether or not you wish to provide comments or whether you wish to just accept it without comment.
Okay, Commissioner Williams.
And I'm sorry, maybe can you tell me again, what day is this appearing before the Town of Monument City Council?
I believe it's next Monday.
Okay.
That's correct. The Town of Monument will be hearing this item on the 7th, which is Monday.
And I don't know if, have we received the annexation report on my email? I don't have my email right here.
Yes, we did receive it by email, and then it should be included in the staff report as well. I'm not sure if you received that.
Not.
Yes.
I was out of the office yesterday. I apologize.
Well, Commissioner Williams, while you're checking that, Commissioner Bremer, I think you had some questions.
Yeah, I think that Commissioner Williams' line of questioning probably has to do with kind of the overall transparency and opportunity for citizen input on this, on something that wasn't noticed. And so my question is kind of what was the notification at all for this maybe being a what is now for us an emergency item. I'm sorry to put you on the spot with that, but I'm a little uncomfortable, to be honest with you. Like, I know we don't have a decision per se to make on this, but I think that if it's kind of an emergent situation for us that wasn't added to an agenda, it most certainly for how am I supposed to evaluate or comment on, will the annexation remove land from an existing special district, or will it do all these other things if we're not able to hear from the other residents in that surrounding impacted area?
Well, and I know that I can say thank you for summarizing my comments exactly. I've received several emails on it,
Okay.
but I think if I'm correct, this was the annexation hearing up at the Town of Monument that had so many people show up to it, they had to postpone it because they didn't have room for it. This was just a few weeks ago. And so I may be getting my two issues mixed up here, but, I certainly could accept the annexation report, but I would want to reserve any comments I would want to send up as well.
I can let you know that we did receive notice on September 20th. The county did, and they did, the Town of Monument state that they would have it on hearing for November 7th. So I'm not sure if this is the same one
I'm
that you're
mixing up
referring
items.
to.
Yeah. I'm mixing up items then. I apologize. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and hear the
Okay.
presentation.
Stand by just a second.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Is the black area on this map the proposed annexation site?
Yes, it is. I apologize. It's kind of hard to see. It was such a great big area that it was hard to get it all in one screen with the county zoning. But here's a map that the Town of Monument did provide. And in the gray, you can see that's what they're proposing to annex.
All right. Are there any other questions from the commissioners at this point? And I'll just stand by a second. Did you have
So
some comments?
north is going to be this end up here. So here's going to be County Line Road.
Commissioner Geithner?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's kind of some conversation going on here. I think I have some concerns about this being an emergency item, and the timing of all of this. It's very hard for me to justify an annexation as an emergency item. An annexation is something that is planned. So I'm not exactly sure how we ended up in this situation, and we can certainly work to find that. But I'm finding it, quite frankly, a little inappropriate to be moving this forward as an emergency item. And I know that it is a kind of a formality, and we're not voting on really whether this annexation can happen, because by statute, I know that the town has that authority. But I'm a little uncomfortable, as has been mentioned, with trying to make comments and assess the impact without having had time for us and the community weigh on this. So I am actually in favor of postponing this item, and I think we need to kind of work through that, but I'm really not comfortable proceeding at this point.
May I comment?
Yes,
Chair?
Mr.
Thank
Waters,
you.
and then Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the impacts to the Town of Monument. I think we do need more time on this item, and so to give the commissioners fair time to go through this process. Maybe you can explain to me if there's something that this, as far as the impacts to the Town of Monument, but my recommendation is we put this on a regular agenda and we move this to a future date.
And Commissioner Gonzalez?
Okay, yeah, so we have requirements. It sounds like they notified us a month early. I don't know if it was the proper notification 2 weeks or a month, I forgot. But did we just receive the packet? And we got notification a month ago. Did we just receive the packet that did not meet the threshold of our, what is our threshold? We have it's either 2 weeks or a month. We got a notice that's outside a month, which is great, but maybe we didn't get the paperwork until within the threshold. Or we got it and we didn't schedule it properly ourselves. I'd kind of like to know that.
And
This would be heard the evening before the Monument Town Council election. And
Right.
I don't mean to bring elections
The-
into it, but
thank you. And I think there's another component here. I appreciate my fellow commissioners bringing up their points. It was, if I recall right, it was issues like this that got us to an annexation negotiation with the city of Colorado Springs and ultimately an annexation agreement that did notifications for annexation many weeks, maybe even it was months. I can't remember the exact provisions, but it was well in advance of any point when we would need to make a decision so that we could properly agendize this and notice it so that citizens, for one example out of several, but so that citizens could have an opportunity to comment. Yes, Mr. Maston.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioner, commissioners. The Kevin Maston, interim director of planning and community development. We failed on this one. Please pull it. We'll get it on another date. This will be corrected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a vote required to pull it, or are we just staff is pulling at this point?
You would, I guess staff, as far as a date certain, is what we'd probably need to do, I assume.
Mr. Chair, I think if we're setting a date certain that we need to vote on it, if staff's just pulling it and re-agendizing it for another day, I think the staff put it on and staff can actually pull it off.
Yes, I would ask to pull it, re-agendize it for another day versus going date certain. We have internal processes that need to be corrected, so we are not putting a fictitious date up there as a date certain.
I
Great.
do have one question. When is Monument supposed to do this? Are they still going to vote on it? I mean,
next Monday night, I was just wondering if we could take just a short
Okay.
5-minute recess so I could make a phone call about this item.
Okay, there's a request for recess. Just a second. Commissioner Bremer, I think you wanted to make some comments.
I think my colleagues are bringing it up. I think just in the interest of transparency, I want to, while this isn't ideal, while I don't feel armed to make some good comments about this right now, what I will say is that we don't have an action item on this. We get to receive it, accept it, comment on it. It's difficult to do on the spot, but it could also mean if we don't hear it today that we might not have an ability to have any input officially. I think that Commissioner Williams' request for a recess may be able to help clarify some of that more or less, but we have to do so if we postpone it and don't hear it today. We have to do so knowing that we might have, because we don't control another body, we might have lost our ability to weigh in on it at all. So this is an uncomfortable situation, I think, for everybody, and we'll try to handle it with grace and statesmanship. Thank you.
Yes, I don't know if Ms. Siegel's ready to make a comment on that. If we don't accept it and then they still hear it next Monday, then have we lost our right to comment on it?
I think, Lori Seago again, so state law does not require the board to take any action on an impact report. It simply requires the municipality to provide the report. And then we, the county, by our own processes, have developed a process to bring it before you to give you an opportunity to provide input back to the municipality if you so choose. If we don't do so by November 7th, we can certainly make comment after that, but obviously it would not be incorporated into whatever discussions or considerations that they are making on the 7th.
Great, thank you. So we have a couple of options before us. One is a request from Commissioner Williams to recess, maybe to just have a quick conversation about this, and a request from Commissioner Bremer, maybe not to act on it in any way, but to at least listen to the testimony for this item. So why don't we take a brief 5-minute recess and kind of get settled on which path we wish to take forward. appreciate everybody's patience for the 5-minute recess. And it's my understanding that while it is still on the agenda for Monument, it will be their intent to postpone it to some date in December. And if I could ask Commissioner Geithner to confirm that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I did speak with Don Wilson, the mayor of Monument, and he did confirm that that is the intent at this point. And so I think that gives us a bit more time to allow staff to re-agendize this. Thank you.
And I think, yes, Commissioner Williams.
And I do believe all of us as commissioners would love to hear the public comments, so that gives us the opportunity to make sure that those who want to come make public comment on it, that we can hear them as well. Even though we may not have much of a choice to make in the accepting or denying of the report, we will always want to give the public their opportunity to speak.
Great, thank you very much. And I believe staff is willing to pull this agenda item, so if you could just reiterate your intentions at this point.
Mr. Chair, we would like to pull that item off the agenda and re-agendize it for a later date that will be prior to Monument hearing this item.
Very good. And because staff is formally requesting this item be pulled from the agenda, there is no need for a vote from the Board of County Commissioners. So unless there's any other comments from anybody, that concludes item number 1, staff emergency items for this annexation. All right. Thank you very much. Let us move to item number 3.
Item number 3 is public comment on items not scheduled on today's agenda. This is the public's opportunity to come up and speak on an item not scheduled on today's agenda.
Yes, sir. Please come on down, sign in and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is David Ellis, and thank you for your time, commissioners. I'd like to pull up my PowerPoint and the listing here. Dave Ellis, Canterbury Estates Homeowners Association. We have 5-acre properties, 134 of them, and our HOA dues are $40 a year per 5-acre property. We're an equestrian community, and we really like living in northern El Paso County. Here's an aerial of some of our properties. You can see we're not too close and not too far away. And the issue I'd like to talk about is Mr. Rail's property in green, and we are to the west, and he has trailers parked right along the fence line of our properties. From Highway 83, here's Mr. Rail's 40 acres. It's all open until you get to his house, and in back of his house, all the trailers against our property. 40 acres, plenty of room. And specifically 3 criteria for trailer storage, rural home occupation. The special use that would be granted for rural home occupation needs to be in harmony with the character of the neighborhood and be compatible generally with the existing allowable land use. The landowner must also have 35 acres, and the storage location must be at least 50 feet from neighboring properties. Mr. Rail certainly has 40 acres, meets 35-acre criteria. Here's our property line and where he has had trailers parked for the last several years, right up next to our fence line. There's another view. His trailers, including semi-tractor trailers that are 13 feet tall, parked right against our equestrian fence line. Now, you can see right above the word line, there's a person on a horse in the background on Mr. Rail's property. There's a corral back there and stables. And that's perfectly in harmony with our equestrian community. And the trailers present sort of an iron curtain, a metal wall between our equestrian properties and Mr. Rail's property that we think is not in harmony at all and really shouldn't be located there, given he has more than the 35 acres of property required for a trailer storage rural home occupation. Here again, you see across our fence line into Mr. Rail's property and the horses on the other side. The big question I'd just like you to keep in mind is, does 35 acres give a rural home occupation candidate carte blanche to put the storage 50 feet away? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just be advised, but I think it's already clear that your comments today are for items not on the agenda. So when this is held on December 6th, yes. And there are a couple of options to make sure that your presentation or any other comments are entered into the record. One is obviously to be present at the December 6th hearing. And I'll just ask the county attorney to confirm others. You could also email it and ask to be made a part of the record for December 6th. And are there any other ways, Mr. County Attorney, for this gentleman to make sure that he has some testimony or some information brought to that meeting?
Mr. Chair, I think that you've covered the matters that I'm aware of. Just another reminder to Mr. Ellison that we can't use the presentation you just gave for that future hearing, so you'd want to come back or provide that to us in some other way.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to make any comments that are not scheduled on the agenda? If so, please come forward. And seeing none, just checking anybody online. No one online. Very good. Let us move to item number 4.
Item number 4 is the land use consent calendar, consisting of item numbers 4A through 4D.
All right, is there anybody in the audience that would like to come forward and provide comments to any of the items on the land use consent calendar? And seeing none, I hate to keep checking, but just one more check there. Anybody online? No? Okay, very good. All right, I'll bring this up to the dais. Are there any comments or questions from any of the commissioners regarding any of these items? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve item 4A through 4D.
Second.
And that's been moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The consent calendar passes 5-0. And let's see, item number 5.
Item number 5 is the called up consent calendar. There are no items called up.
All right, item number 6, we have postponed to a future date certain on December 6th. Item number 7.
Item number 7 is a special use, 17340 Fairplay Drive Minor Kennel, a request by Mark and Ann Sieglum for approval of a minor kennel as a special use for 8 personal dogs. The 1.06 acre property is zoned RS 20,000 residential suburban and is located approximately 1/2 mile northwest of the intersection of West Higbee Road and Fairplay Drive and is within section 24, township 11 south, range 67 west of the 6th PM, parcel number 71241-03-061, Commissioner District Number 1, file AL 22014, Kylie Bagley, Planner 2, Planning and Community Development.
Great, thank you. Please come on up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kylie Bagley, Planner 2 with El Paso County Planning and Community Development. Also with us is Carlos Hernandez, who was the engineer on this project, if you have any questions for him as we go through our presentation. This is for file number AL 2214 for a special use for a minor kennel for 8 personal dogs. If there's anyone watching remotely and have not provided a name or a reliable Phone number, please email that to pcdhearings@elpasoco.com. I would now like to ask the county attorney to read in the criteria for approval.
Commissioners, the criteria for approval for a special use are before you on the screen, and I will summarize them. When considering a special use, you are to consider whether the special use is generally consistent with the master plan and will generally be in harmony with the character of the neighborhood and compatible with existing and allowable land uses in the surrounding area. Whether the impact of the special use will overburden or exceed the capacity of public facilities and services, or will, in the alternative, will provide such public facilities and services. Whether the special use will create unmitigated traffic congestion or traffic hazards and has adequate access. Whether the special use will comply with all applicable laws and regulations regarding pollution. Whether the special use will be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. And whether the special use conforms to all other applicable county rules, regulations, and ordinances.
So the owner and applicant for this project is Mark and Ann Sieglum. Before I invite them down here to do their presentation, I just want to make you aware that we did receive some videos for opposition today, which I did send to all of your emails, but we do have them available to be played at this hearing if you do wish to see those at this time. Just let me know. We can do that at any point. And I'd like to go ahead and invite the applicants down to present at this time.
Okay, very good.
Chairman Vanderwerf, Vice Chairman Bremer, Commissioners, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. My name is Mark Seglum, and I indeed live at 17340 Fairplay Drive in Monument in Woodmore. And accompanying me today is my lovely wife, Ann. We're come before you today. Thank you very much for your time to request a special use permit for our property for 8 personal dogs. Background on this is we moved into our home in August of 2007. At the time, we were not aware of the El Paso County limit on dogs. Would take full responsibility for that. We owned more than 4 dogs when we actually moved into Woodmore. And I think it's important to point out that 5 of our 8 dogs are elderly or older and have lived with us for their entire lives. I won't go down through the list of our dogs, or the 5 that are, actually 6 that are older. I would like to make it very clear that we have no intention whatsoever to operate as a commercial kennel. We are literally looking just to be able to keep our elderly dogs with us until they pass. And that's why we're asking for the special use permit, which we understand from the county is the only way that we would be able to keep all 8 of our dogs versus the 4 allowed by county regulation. Additional pertinent information, as our dogs pass, we will not replace them. We anticipate that within 5 years, we would be down to 4, if not 3, based on the age and longevity of the dogs. And we have spoken to our vet about that to confirm that. Our dogs are kept indoors. There are no outdoor kennels. We are not planning any outdoor kennels, nor do the dogs stay in any outdoor kennels. They stay inside our home. And we have had 1 complaint of dogs to the HOA that was verified in 15 plus years, and that was in January of 2009. My wife and I recently have purchased an additional half-acre behind us. We were part of the South Woodmore, the WASC project, which I know the commissioners are well aware of, and added to our plat. 7/8 of that a little over an acre that we now own is in the back, and that's where we allow our dogs to run. We have subsequently put in a fence in accordance with county regulation as well as for our HOA. And I will also add that the dog waste is collected every week, if not more often than that, and that for what it matters, I've taken up the land and planted Colorado natural grass back there, actually in front as well. So in summary, we're requesting this permit to keep our family together. We will not operate as a commercial kennel. We will not replace our dogs as they pass on. And as I said, based on their longevity, we should be down to 3, perhaps 4 dogs within the next 5 years. Thank you very much for your consideration on this. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Very good. Are there any questions for the applicant at this time, Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, so on the, are the dogs running right along the back of your property?
Yes, they do. They run along the fence line behind our property.
All right, and have you taken any consideration to move them in more internally so they're not right on the new path behind
So
there?
what we have done is we have invested and planted over 40 lilac bushes as well as cherry bushes, which will take some time to grow. We actually added just 4 more here this fall along the back fence. Our fence is offset from our property line in accordance with the requirements from the HOA, so the fence is not right on the property line, but actually set back from the property line. We had one neighbor that came in and said, can you put another fence inside your fence that's another 20 feet back? I don't believe that that's a requirement or anything that we need to do in terms of the land that we own. Many of the walkers that walk behind our property don't keep their dogs under control, which is also part of the requirement, either on a leash or under electronic control. We've had many cases where dogs have run right up to our fence on our property, and yes, our dogs bark. I would also tell you, Commissioner Williams, that the barking is not related to this because the 4 dogs that bark when people walk behind are younger dogs, and we would have those dogs anyway with respect to the 8 dogs we have. The elderly dogs are our smaller dogs, which are miniature dachshunds, a cockapoo, and a cocker spaniel.
Okay, and
Yes, please, go ahead.
just one more question. When you moved in, and I know that realtors aren't required to disclose this, but were you aware the HOA only allows 4 dogs?
No, I wasn't at the time, but I did sign a paper that said that I had read all of the covenants, which is a small phone book size. We did go through it. I did go through the covenants, did not see that piece. Every neighborhood we'd ever lived in, there wasn't that sort of a requirement. And so I missed it or read over it or looked at it and said, well, we have more than 4 anyway, so we're not going to get rid of our dogs at that point. And that has not been an issue until just recently.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Commissioner Geithner?
You mentioned a setback, that your fence is actually already offset because of an HOA requirement. Can you
Yes.
tell me what that is in feet?
When I went out and measured it, it's from the center of the walking path that is back there. It is between 15 and 20 feet set back from the center of the walking path. Now, I will also tell you that when the walking path went in, or didn't go in, it was just a path that was beaten down by people walking back there as part of the WASC. We had put in a formal request to WASC to move the walking path further from our property line because it goes very close to our property line. The properties behind us do not have a fence, and so there's plenty of room to be able to move that path away even further from our fence. The WASC said that they would make sure that happened. It did not, and so we continued on. We have subsequently requested to Woodmore Improvement Association, that path be moved further from our back property line as well. And WIA, who now owns that area and is going to do put in a finished path over the winter, is what they have told me. They have spoken very favorably to actually moving the path further away from our property line. And I actually, in fact, have a meeting with them in the very near future to sit down and look at that and see how we can move that path a little bit further from our property line.
Certainly, if I could just, as a follow-up, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the measurement from the path, but I'm trying to understand how much of your property you are not utilizing by not putting your fence, if that makes sense. So from the edge of your property to where your actual fence is, do you have
Yeah, that's what I meant. Is it's roughly 15 to 20 feet. We're required. Well, that's not true. I would say it's 10 to 12 feet.
Okay.
We're required to keep it back a minimum of 8 feet. And when I measured it, and we had an approved contractor that put it in. When the contractor came in and put it in, I said, be sure that, we follow what the HOA rules are. And the contractor was very familiar with our neighborhood and said, nope, I've got it. And in fact, set it back just a little bit more.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
Sorry, your older dogs are the smaller ones.
Correct.
So the ones who make more noise are the younger ones?
3 of them are, yes.
Okay.
And Commissioner, if I may, when you say make more noise, we have lots of dogs in the neighborhood who bark uncontrollably.
Yes.
Our dogs do not bark uncontrollably. We keep bark collars on them. And as I said, though they are outside for periods of time, they do not stay outside all day.
Okay. And are they outside in the night?
No, not other than about 9 o'clock. We let them out for a last bathroom break, and then they're brought in and kept inside. They very rarely bark late at night. If they do, it's because there's deer or something else walking back there behind there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Geithner.
Have there ever been any official noise complaints or is there anything on record where, there has had to be law enforcement or anything come out to address violations of the noise ordinance?
No. The only thing that has occurred in January of 2009, we received a letter from the HOA on a barking complaint, it was a $50 fine suspended unless the dog continued to bark. We never heard about it again. There was no $50 fine, and that was the end of it.
Great. Thank you. All right, I don't think we have any more questions for you, Mr. Seglem, so thank you very much. I think at this point,
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I think at this point, we'll ask for the staff to come up if you have anything else.
I'm sorry, did you want me to finish my presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay. So just some background information, the county did receive a code enforcement complaint on the property in April of 2022. The Seglems did come in right away for an early assistance meeting in order to help correct that code enforcement case that was filed against them, which is why they're going through this special use process. The subject property is located right here on Fairplay. It is surrounded by RS 20,000 zoning. As they did mention, they do have a walking path that does go through the rear, behind the rear of their property. Excuse me. So the county does have a regulation on animal keeping. So the keeping of 4 or more dogs or cats in any combination over 4 months of age on the same property shall be considered a kennel and shall meet the standards for kennels. I did include information on a minor kennel, which would occur with 5 to 8 dogs or cats. That does include personal animals, which is why the Seaglums are in front of you today. They are requesting a minor kennel for 8 personal dogs. They have very clearly stated in their letter of intent that they will not use the special use for a minor kennel as a commercial business. Just some information, the El Paso Master Plan does have this as a suburban residential place type. Again, they're not proposing a commercial business as part of this minor kennel, so it will be kept residential in nature with no additional traffic coming if it was a commercial business. They're in minimal change developed. They're not going to make any additions to their existing home, put any additional structures as part of their site plan that they provided to the county. Go ahead and skip over transportation and drainage. Does anyone have any questions for staff? I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
All right, are there any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Williams?
I do have a question. I do believe we have someone tracking it down. Is this in a Humane Society controlled area of the county?
No, it is not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
And then the request to have it time limited, correct? Special use or
So there is no request for a time limit. The Planning Commission did add a condition stating that when the Seaglums did move out of the property, that the special use would cease to exist at that time.
okay, thanks.
And maybe as a follow-on to that, it appears that the Seaglums' interest is upon passing of some dogs where they get back down to a 4-person limit, there would be no need for the special use, and could they surrender it at that time, or would it be appropriate to surrender it, or does it become invalid at that time?
It would become invalid at that time. I believe there is a standard condition on there that if the special use permit is not being used for a time period of 2 years, that it would cease to exist as well. So if they went down to 4 dogs for those 2 years, then it would cease.
It would just automatically vacate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Any other questions from any of the commissioners? All right, hearing none. At this point, I would like to call for any members of the public that would like to testify in favor of this application. All right, and just checking anybody online. Nobody online, okay? Seeing none coming forward, I'd like now to call for any members of the public that would like to testify in opposition to this application.
May it please the board. My name is Brian Bush. I'm the president of the Woodmore Improvement Association, which I think, as some of the commissioners know, represents about 3,100 homes.
And sir, sorry to interrupt, but if you get that microphone a little
Okay,
higher.
Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
thanks.
WIA represents about 3,100 homes, 7 sub-associations. In this particular area, with regard to this particular applicant, we have primary enforcement authority of our covenants and our rules and regulations. Our covenants do provide that you may have domestic pets, but you may not have domestic pets that create a nuisance. Our rules provide and mirror what the county has, which is you may have no more than 4 dogs. Recently, as a result of the application that was submitted to the commission, and as a result of residents who came to the board meeting last Wednesday night, the association board has concluded that in this particular property, we have a covenant problem. We intend to pursue covenant enforcement for a nuisance. Now, we want to work with, and as we usually do in covenant enforcement matters, we want to work with the residents. We recognize that this is a somewhat unusual situation given the length of time those dogs have been there, at least 8. In some cases, the testimony is a few more times. And we want to seek a solution, but the solution I don't think is going to last 5 years. These dogs have created a problem for the adjoining residents and for nearby residents who have brought this to our attention. So I'm going to ask the commission to disapprove the special use request because the association intends to pursue covenant negotiation, covenant enforcement action with regard to this particular applicant that would be inconsistent with keeping 8 dogs for as long as they have asked. And I'll entertain any questions the commissioners may have.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you. So is it the nuisance, is it noise, scaring people walking by? You didn't describe what the nuisance
It
is.
has been the noise and it has been the dogs running up to the fence while people walked along the path behind their fence. As you may know, Woodmore did not own that property until June 9th of this year. We do now. The applicant is correct that we intend to try to move the path a little bit more toward the middle of the property, but there still has been a problem with the number of dogs and their behavior over quite a period of time.
Thank you. Any other questions from any of the commissioners? All right. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
I believe there was another gentleman that was interested in coming down to testify in opposition. And take your time. Always important to be safe on the stairs. And while this gentleman is coming down, is there anybody else that wishes to testify in opposition? Okay, we have one more. Thank you. Or 2 more? 2 more. Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you for hearing me. My name's John Otino, and I'm a resident that also live along this property, which now belongs to the Woodmore Improvement Association. We purchased that property from the Walters family. It was private. It was zoned single-family residential. It has gone on the market to be sold, to be developed. A group of residents got together, spent a significant amount of money, including the Seglums, to purchase that property to turn it into open space. When we did and finally closed on that and turned it over to WIA on the 10th of June of this year. Now, when the path was there before, when it was still private, it was just from people using it. Basically, it's still in the same shape because it has not been improved yet by the Woodmore Improvement Association. Moving the path 10 feet is unfair to the neighbors to the west of the Seglums because the path was moved in some areas from where it was originally used to be equally distant between the properties that were purchased. Just because the properties to the west of the Seglums are not fenced doesn't allow them to move that property 10 feet, which in some cases may be on somebody else's private property, even though it's not fenced. The special permit, they said it lived here 15 years, never a complaint prior. That is an absolute lie. Now, formally, to the HOA, that may be true. Unfortunately, the documentation, as was noted at the last meeting, was not that great. So that's a bad on us, the HOA. But personally, to the Seglums, they have received numerous complaints from previous neighbors, current neighbors, and other neighbors. The flow of strangers, dogs roam free. I walk that path twice a day. And I pass their house 4 times a day because I go up, turn around, and come back. My dog never leaves the path when we pass there. He never barks. Those dogs come out barking aggressively. They also attack each other. And I'm talking not just playing with each other, attacking each other. And the shock collars either are not set sufficiently to control them or they're ineffective because the dogs bark whether they have them on or not. You all have a copy of kind of what I'm reading here. Hopefully you have read it all. But I'm going to just say in closing, I would like to say that this issue of barking dogs has been an ongoing problem for neighbors for years. It was made worse when the Seglums chose to fence their property, which is their right, as close to the open space as possible, resulting in their dogs being within feet of the trail. It wasn't like they didn't know the trail was going to be that close to the property. In a statement to Ms. Bagley, they say, the Seglums say, I invite you to come. I wish you would. And I wish we could see the,
You can go ahead and
All right.
make a closing statement. And
any questions?
any questions for, yes, Commissioner Guyton?
I do. I have just a couple questions. You said that you walk by about 4 times a day. And I'm wondering, just to get clarification on, how often they're outside, what the impact is here. So am I hearing you correctly that you're saying you walk by 4 times a day and the dogs are out there every single time?
They're not out every time when I walk by 4 times a day. I walk my dog in the morning, usually around 8:30 to 9, and then again in the afternoon, sometimes between 4:30 to 5. Sometimes when I walk, they'll be out there every day during that period of time I'm walking by. Other times they're not out at all. So I can't say they're out there all the time, every time I walk by. But when I do walk by and they're out there, I mean, it's even not so much an issue of more than 4 dogs. This is a nuisance issue. And in our rules and regulations, nuisances need to be addressed too. I mean, I live, as a crow flies, a third of a mile or more away. I can be out on my front porch and I know when somebody's walking down that trail because I can hear the dogs barking from my house. Think of your next door neighbors. So I mean, they could get rid of 4 dogs and just keep these 4 dogs, and it's still going to be a problem, a nuisance problem.
And I understand, but what you're talking about, that we've got a couple different things that are a little bit being conflated in that, and that's what I'm trying to separate this out, because there's a responsibility of us from a governmental perspective, and then your HOA is something else entirely different that Mr. Seglum is going to have to deal with, and you all will have to deal with, but that's not something we are going to be deciding here today. But that's exactly what I'm trying to get at, is what the actual problem and complaints are. Is it about the number of dogs, how often, the frequency? So when the dogs are out there, and you're saying sometimes they're out there, are they all out at once? Is it some of them out?
The 4 are all out at once. I have, we're talking about 8 dogs. I personally counted 7 small dogs in their yard at one time. And this 4 big dogs, that's 11 dogs. And whether it's 8 or 11, it's still over the 4 required. But I suspect, and also one of those dogs, the last week I was walking by, or a couple of weeks ago, its udders were literally hanging on the ground. I thought it had ripped its belly open. It appears to me one of their dogs probably had a litter of puppies here recently. So there may be another litter of puppies in their house right now too. I don't know. No verification for that, other than the fact I saw the dog's udders.
And we can
And I
certainly
know what a dog looks like.
We can certainly
The other
ask that
thing on
question, but
the,
I believe that this only counts up dogs up to 4 months old anyway, so I don't even think that would be relevant in this particular discussion. But I thank you for answering my questions.
Okay. Also, on the criteria, one of the things is compatibility with the area that it's in for the criteria for approving a cross like this. This area is not compatible at all for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe there was 2 other people. Which of you would like to go first? Thank you, sir. And when you come down, please state your name, and then you can get started.
Good afternoon. My name's Tom Snyder. I live to the south neighbor. I'm the south neighbor to Seglum's. We moved in 5.5 years ago. They had a lot of dogs. They're small dogs that every time we open our deck door or we go in our backyard or try to eat on the back deck, we hear constant barking from the little yapping dogs. And I would talk to them and they would say, well, give us a call if it's annoying and we'll put them in. Well, sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. As far as numbers of dogs go, they have continued to abuse the number of 4 dogs or more because they moved into the house with more than 4 dogs. They bred their dog that they got when we moved in. And so Mark's math saying 5 of the 8 dogs are old, that's not true because 4 of the dogs they've gotten since we've moved in or recently before as a puppy. So the math is wrong there. They bred their female Labrador and had, I think, 8 puppies. And I distinctly asked Mark, are you sure you're going to sell them all? And he said, we will absolutely not keep any of the puppies. Well, they kept 2 of the puppies. And now the 2 puppies are 2 of the 4 large dogs that continually bark day after day. And we have multiple videos to show this. And again, you reach a point as a neighbor in the first 2 years, we tried to be nice. You know, we wanted to be good neighbors because the prior neighbor had hated them for their barking dogs. They even closed a window on the north side of their house because they couldn't stand the dogs barking. So when Mark says, I've done everything to be a good neighbor, he planted, what did he say, 40 bushes? He planted 40 sticks. And I have a photo I could show you. Those dogs will all be dead before those are bushes, okay? And so when he talks about doing all these things to improve the situation, it's a joke. He stretches a number of issues on this to a point of untruth. And as far as the legalities go, ignorance of the law is no excuse. I'm sorry. When they moved in, dogs were their family. So when they were reading through and signing off, dogs would have been an important thing to look into, I would have thought. So they continually add dogs. Their son moved in with them. He got another dog. So at one point, they had 7 or 8 little dogs plus the big dogs. This is a family that continues to stretch it at every chance they get. And our former owners of the house said it, and we have seen it continually. They ignore it, and they just push the limits. So if you people want to continue to accept that by giving them a kennel, all you're doing is saying it's okay to break the law. And it will set a precedent in the community where I will go online and tell everybody, you can have all the dogs you want because there's nothing that anybody seems to do about it. And I have called this county group over the last 3 years numerous times. At one point, I talked to a woman, I can't remember her name. She was wonderful. She sent a letter to them. He came over and approached Nancy and said, did you call in our dogs? And she said, no, because I did. And so he's known. The county's known. It's just that nobody seems to do anything about it. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Are there any questions for this citizen at this point? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
You said you had a
Commissioner
video. I know we got these late-minute videos. Could
We have
could we
video.
see one of the videos?
Yeah, I was going to
I think that
ask
would be
for the
fair to
videos too, but
demonstrate one of the videos.
I wanted to ask the man to, I apologize, I don't remember names very
Tom.
well, Tom. So even if he does just go down to 3 or 4 dogs, which is the counties, you're still going to have the nuisance. Is there a way to mitigate that nuisance?
Well, I don't know
because-
when he would go down to the 3 or 4 dogs. It could be a long time.
Okay. Yeah,
those
'cause I
dogs-
can't, you
little
know, my-
dogs live old.
The first problem I was trying to solve was getting rid of the nuisance by the trail. But if you just move the dogs up by the house, then that still affects you. And so that's a question I also had for the planning department when they come
Well,
back up.
and one of the things when you talk about being a good neighbor, the consideration they might have taken into account is, instead of putting the fence to the very maximum back place, knowing that the trail is there and has been there long before they moved there, it would have been very considerate to put the fence maybe 20 feet, 30 feet in, because there's enough room in there now. You could put horses or cows out there. It's that big. 4 dogs do not need that much space. But by putting the fence all the way out, he invited what he calls people harassing my dogs. And we have video, we sit in our kitchen, in our deck, and watch people, you know, one after another go by, people with carriages with little kids, and they look scared because these dogs are so aggressively attacking the fence. Another thing is, Mark talks about all these people, dogs running loose, running up to the fence. That is false. We see time and time again, people with dogs on leashes, with their dog on the trail, and they do not leave the trail. There's other people whose dogs are so well trained, they stay right by them and keep walking. There's maybe an occasional dog that on a leash will start barking back at the dogs. Other than that, his exaggeration of these things for his poor dogs is just a joke. I mean, it comes down to, I can give you all the proof in the world of where he's lying. And I've got a picture of his twigged little bushes that will never count for anything. So it just frustrates me when I see rules and regulations and laws that have been in place, and these people continually push the limits of it.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams, do you still have an interest in seeing one of the videos?
I would like to see, I think there's two
So,
videos.
I think
that
there's
they
3
sent.
videos there. Would we like to pick one of them?
Yeah, there's 3 videos. Would you just like me to pull one up?
Pick one.
Why don't you just pick one of them and show it?
Now, this shows a picture of people approaching on the path or approaching as they walk. And this shows the picture of the dogs. They wait, and then they go nuts. Notice the woman is holding her dog on a leash. Notice the aggressive attacking mode that the 2 of the dogs of Seglums go at each other with. I think it's an alpha dog situation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'll leave you. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
And ma'am, I think you wanted to come up and testify as well. I think it might be your time.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. This is my first rodeo. I've never been in front of a commission before, so kind of nerve-wracking a little bit. But my name's Nancy Eldred, and I'm the owner of the house next to the Seglums. Tom more or less kind of spoke to a lot of what I have to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Shortly after we moved in, we found out that we had neighbors with 8 dogs. And since then, we've had anywhere from 8 to 15 dogs next door. As Tom mentioned, they did breed their female dog with all intentions of selling them all. But in the meantime, they were at the residence. And obviously, they were puppies. They weren't out a whole lot. But the fact was they had 15 dogs. And they decided to keep 2 of them, which brought them over the limit that they originally had, even more so. Over the years, they've had a few of their dogs pass away, and our thought was that they would eventually get down to 4 dogs, as the El Paso County rule states, but that didn't happen. They just went ahead and replaced the deceased dogs with more dogs. I spoke with Mark in the front yard shortly after we moved in about the El Paso law. He knew that he only was supposed to have 4 dogs. I can't say he didn't know it 15 years ago, but in 2017 and 18, he did. And in 2020, 21, he just continuously just added more dogs to their family. And I understand you want to keep your dogs if you've had them since puppies, but they all haven't been there since they've been puppies because they've added them. If they just would have not added the puppies that they either purchased or they bred, we'd be down today to 4 or 5 dogs, and it wouldn't be an issue. When we moved in, they had, 7 or 8 small dogs. I don't really know. They were all dachshunds, little bitty dogs. They were coming and going, and the yard was much smaller. So the problem that they had was just mainly with the neighbors behind them and next to them. The walking trail wasn't there then. And the number of dogs that were there were 8 small dogs that they all let out from the side of their house down through the yard. And they yapped all the time. And Mark and Ann were nice to give us their phone number to let us give them a call when there was issues. So obviously when someone does that, they know there's issues, because obviously they had issues with the previous owner. So it wasn't like I didn't know. And I consider ourselves good friends with them for a number of years. We called them, we used their phone number. Oh, I'm already done. So, they knew there was a problem, and, we called them and they would bring the dogs in. But we went ahead and filed for the 8 rule dog limit when they chose to keep 2 of the puppies. That's when we knew that this was going to continue to be a problem. They didn't care. They didn't consider us. They didn't consider what the dogs were doing.
And this has created now a rivalry. And now I live next to people I can't even talk to anymore over dogs. Sorry. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to testify in opposition to this application?
Do you have any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are
I'll
there any
take a breath.
questions
Okay. Do you
for
have any
this
questions for
person?
me?
No,
Okay.
thank you for your testimony.
Yeah, I'm going to check in a second. And is there anybody online? No. Okay. So per our procedures, the applicant is afforded an opportunity to provide rebuttal to any of the testimony. If you wish to come forward and do so, you may do so at this time.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to say I really don't like being called a liar. I am not a liar. Neither is my wife. The dogs that we have are, when the one person who was testifying stated that the dogs literally fight each other, that is a brother and a sister, and they wrestle very, very hard, but they are not fighting each other. In the video that was shown, you saw the other dog walking along the path, barking at my dogs. We have talked to our veterinarian about that, who has said, if a dog barks at your dog's going to bark back. That's what dogs do. If people walk behind your house with dogs, your dogs are going to bark. But I would argue as well that we're conflating two issues here. One is for us to be able to keep our 8 dogs. One is a concern about a nuisance. When I am called a liar about complaints, that is simply not true. Whenever we have been called and asked about our dogs, we have acted immediately to do something about that. And it is very upsetting to hear a bevy of untruths told to you today about our dogs and about what we have done and haven't done with respect to our dogs. I would also tell you that in particular, one of the things that is extremely upsetting to us is when we received the notice from the county, my wife asked Ms. Aldred whether or not the issue was with them and that they had put it in, and her answer was, I did not turn you in. Well, Tom did, and Tom is her partner. That's going around things a little bit that I just don't think is quite right. When he says that there are dogs that do not run up to the fence, at the risk of being a bit of a smart aleck, I appreciate my neighbor watching my back fence as much as he does, but he's simply wrong. We do have a lot of dogs that run up to our fence. There are many that do not. Many are on leashes. Many are controlled by other people walking behind the fence. I think the last thing that I would like to say is there is one group that is not here today, and that is our neighbors to the north of us who live on the other side of us. They have no problem with our dogs, and our dogs run up and back and forth behind the fence, and they have absolutely no problem with that. We didn't ask them to come testify today because we didn't want to put the bother on them or any of our other neighbors when it came to this. And so all we're asking here again is for us to be able to keep our dogs until they pass.
My name's Ann Seglum, and I just wanted to add that our dogs are not the only dogs that bark in the neighborhood. We have some standard poodles, that I think they're standard poodles, big dogs that live right across from us, and they bark all the time as well when people walk by. I mean, there's many times when I have all my dogs in the house and you can hear dogs barking. So for someone to say that they know it's our dogs, how can they know when they just walk the path? But when the comment was made that he could hear dogs barking from his house, so can I. I can hear other dogs barking too. So you can't blame it all on us. There's other dogs in the neighborhood. So, you know, no one's talking about any of that, but there are other dogs that bark, not just ours. And we have we're constantly and continue to work with the young dogs that bark. You know, my old dog has a barking collar, shock collars on them. It's burned her throat. My vet has accused me of abusing my dog. You know, saying that bark collars are abuse, a form of abuse to animals, that shock. So I'm trying to please everyone on that. And we're, again, we only let them out there to go to the bathroom and run and play, the big ones, run and play. And all this has nothing to do with what we're asking is to keep our dogs. The whole issue was the count of the dogs, not the barking. And we're working on fixing that. But again, this whole presentation was to keep our dogs.
And I would just add as a final thought, we have never had 15 dogs, ever. We haven't even come close to that number of dogs. So again, I appreciate that our neighbors are trying to keep count and certainly manage our business for us, but that's just simply not true. Thank you.
I have one question.
Okay. Commissioner Gonzalez first, and then Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree, there are two different issues. If you only have 4 dogs, you can still have the nuisance complaint. So the video showed them barking. So the collars not work? Were they not on during that time?
If you went back to the video, if you'll hear the collar go off.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I'm not a dog owner. Are there different strengths of that? Is there
are.
something you can do to
Right.
help?
You're right,
Were
and we have, so the collars that we use are collars that they beep first. If the dog continues to bark, they then vibrate. And if the dog continues to bark, they then shock. And these are the collars that have actually scarred one of our dogs as a result of that. And we took that as sort of a hazard. By the way, when the collars go off, the dogs stop barking. Now, are there times when, you know, the collar runs out of juice? Yes. As soon as we know that, we recharge the collar. They're rechargeable. They're rechargeable collars. They don't have batteries. They're rechargeable. And we certainly do that at every opportunity. And in fact, we have spare collars that we keep charged, and we'll just replace them on the dogs. But if the collar dies and the dog runs out and is barking at that time, there's nothing we can do about it until we get the dog in and can change that. The other thing I will tell you is that I won't say it's all the time, but rarely do the dogs bark when it's just a person, or they'll give a brief woof and not bark continuously. And by the way, they only bark while the folks are walking behind the property. As soon as the folks clear the property, they stop. And so there's a less than 3-minute amount of time there that the dogs bark, unless someone is standing right by the back of the property and just standing there, which unfortunately has occurred with our neighbor. But that's public land, and so he can certainly do that, but I would consider that harassment of the dogs to get them to bark.
Okay, Commissioner Williams?
Yes. So in addition to the things you've listed, going down to going down to 4 dogs after older dogs die, are there things that you would be willing to do to otherwise mitigate the problem? For example, a dog run close to the north side of your property that doesn't hit all the way back at the end of the property.
Well, I'm really not, quite honestly, so first of all, yes, we applied to the HOA to put in the green sort of masking fencing that like at a tennis court along the inside of that fence, along the entire back and all of that. The covenants, however, which is what the HOA absolutely has to stick to, the HOA came back and denied that request. We feel that would be something that would help greatly until the bushes do grow. By the way, they are not sticks, they are bushes. If Mr. Snyder would like to purchase larger bushes for me to plant, I would be more than happy to do that. But putting in a dog run, I think, is unfair to the dogs. That is our property. That is our 1 acre of land. We are well within county code. We are well within county requirements. We are well within HOA requirements with our fencing. We have done everything by the rules other than have more than 4 dogs. And I would also tell you is, I said at the very beginning of my presentation that we did not realize that when we first moved in. And I don't know how Ms. Eldred or Mr. Snyder would know that I did, since they've only been there 5 years and we've been there 15. Okay? But I would tell you that, in fact, I understand that ignorance of the law is no excuse, and I make no excuse. Okay, we did what we did. We had them. We've gotten to the point where we have 8, and all we're asking is, with the older ones, where it would be extremely hard to find them a home, have no place to put them or anything like that, to just allow them to die naturally, and then we won't replace them.
Are any of the female dogs, have they been spayed?
All of our male dogs have been neutered. And all of our female dogs, with the exception of 1, have now been spayed.
And is it your intention to spay her or to breed her?
We don't plan on breeding her at all. No.
Okay. Thank you.
No, we're not having any more puppy litters.
Okay, are there any other questions for the applicant from the board? All right, seeing none, this now concludes our public hearing, and I'll declare that the public hearing is closed. And before we proceed and bring the conversation up here to the dais, I'd like to take a brief recess, 5 minutes, at least for one person that I know needs a comfort break. Thank you. are now reconvening this meeting, and we are considering item 7. The public hearing is closed, and I have brought the hearing now up to the dais. And I believe that this is in District 1 for Commissioner Williams, and we usually have as our, did you have a need to say something else? I'm sorry, did I miss something?
No, that's fine. I just didn't want to interrupt. I just have a clarification to make about a question earlier that was brought up. If this was under an animal control area, and it is, it's in the Woodmore Tri-Lakes area. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So this is jurisdiction for the Humane Society?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And I'll open it up for any comments from any of the commissioners, but just as a reminder, this is Commissioner District 1. So Commissioner Williams, it is our tradition for you to make the motion. But before we do that, let's see if we've got any comments or questions.
Yeah,
from
can you
any of
just bring up the
commissioners.
criteria again? Didn't we have some
Yeah,
criteria?
that'd be great.
I'm sorry, what was that? I have a little
Don't you
trouble
have like
hearing today.
criteria?
And while that's being brought up, are there any other comments or questions from any of the commissioners at this point?
So there was a reference to a complaint to the HOA and a call-in. So how many complaints to the county do we have?
We do have one active code enforcement case. I can look and see how many complaints were made as part of that case, if
Okay,
you would like.
thanks. Yep.
Actually, I can bring, and Joe Lecky's going to come down. He's our code enforcement supervisor. He can shed some light on that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Commissioner Joe Letke, Code Enforcement Supervisor. We received 2 code enforcement complaints on this issue, both in 2022.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions from any of the commissioners?
I do have a question. I'm not exactly sure who could answer it. In the event that we were to deny this application, what would be the standard for when the dogs must be removed from the property?
I would have to have a discussion with the county attorney's office regarding that violation. So I don't have an answer exactly at this time.
Thank you.
And I do want to make a comment myself. Regardless of how this goes, and I did check with our county attorney, the Woodmore Improvement Association does have its own separate right of action. There was a claim made today that they intend on pursuing covenant enforcement action. And regardless of how this proceeding concludes, they have a separate right of action and can do so no matter what is decided here today. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear for all the commissioners. I'll just ask the county attorney if I stated that correctly.
Yes, Commissioner, I believe so. And if I could also address Commissioner Williams' question as well, as far as how a special use permit could possibly be walked in, I think that you can add conditions intended to mitigate the effects. So it could be a scenario of backing off the number over time or something along those lines.
And right now, I think the proposed document that we would be approving if we vote in the affirmative has 2 conditions and 2 notations on it. I'm sorry, is it 3 and 3? My apologies, I must have missed it. Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, regardless of how this comes out, I think there's the 2 separate things, whether this would approved for this use, and then also the nuisance. And so I do just ask the resident to take that into, I mean, you really take into account what you can do to help mitigate the barking. I go jogging in Colorado Springs. When I get behind a house that has dogs, they bark at me. But I know if it's excessive, then it does become a nuisance, and that can, drive additional things. So whatever you can do to improve on the dog collar or the training or something. But I do understand when somebody comes behind a house, because I do it. I jog, I walk, I get barked at every time I stop by a house with a dog outside.
And maybe in light of the considerations, is it possible to get on the overhead the copy of the document that we'd be voting on here, make sure that we can see what the words are. I know it's in the package, and for some reason, I'm not finding it now.
Well, it's on the resolution page too. That doesn't help.
Mr. Chair, are you wanting?
I've got the two conditions and notations here.
I'll just try, this is Lori Siegel, I'll just try to pull it up on the internet. I don't know, do we have a keyboard?
I had it here a second ago now.
If I can have the overhead, that might be faster. We've got the resolution here. So there's condition 1, and I'll pull up the others.
Or different, okay.
$30-day.
And just to supplement what Mr. Hodges stated, if the board feels that there are additional conditions that you would like to consider to mitigate any negative effects of approving this item, those are, you certainly have the ability to add those if you see fit, and we can discuss that further if you've got proposals for that.
And I know that the planning, I'll stand by.
Oh, where's the third one?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please, Commissioner.
Per our agenda packet, page 15 of 71 on the PDF that's posted online, I see 3 conditions and 3 notations, but it looks like perhaps the third in both cases are pretty standard. It says upon sale of the property, special use permit shall expire, and if the special use that was under conditions and under notations, if it is discontinued or abandoned for 2 years or longer, it shall be deemed abandoned and not in effect.
And we're working on pulling that up in EDARP for you as well, so we have the complete resolution.
Thank you.
I can start some discussion here. My concern with this application is under the requirements for the application, the special use will generally be in harmony with the character of the neighborhood. I don't think it is in harmony with the character of the neighborhood. And the other item is, I put that one down as I didn't believe it met it, but I don't know why. I have some concerns that the applicant didn't provide any alternative for mitigations. And I'm struggling, but I think in the end, I will probably move to deny this application unless someone can come up with a better idea. The only other option I have is to approve the application with the condition that they have 8 months to bring the number of their dogs down to 4. And so right now it's my intention to move to deny the application unless someone has a more creative idea.
Okay, very good. And just ask the question, while the staff is looking for the conditions and notations, is that a formal motion? Or is it just a topic?
Well, it's just my intention right now. I just didn't know if y'all wanted to pitch in and give me some better ideas. Because
Yes,
otherwise I
Commissioner
will
Guy.
make that a
Commissioner
formal
Guy.
motion.
I'm going to make a comment. I don't know that it's an idea, and certainly we may not agree on this, but there are a lot of different pieces here. And I don't think that having 8 dogs is out of harmony with the community. If they were all quiet dogs, it seems like it would be just fine with the community. So breaking this argument apart, I am not comfortable asking a private property owner to make concessions of the use of their property. They've already made a concession of a use of their property. As Commissioner Gonzalez mentioned, I'm also a dog owner. I live in a neighborhood with much smaller lots. On those smaller lots, those neighbors are also allowed to have 4 dogs. Some of them do. Some of them have 4 very large dogs on less than a quarter of an acre. They bark. They often run up the sides of the fences and bark, and that might just be if my family's in the backyard. We have dogs that do that. Certainly, I understand that can be frustrating at times, but I don't think it's out of the ordinary. As a matter of fact, when I walk my dogs around my neighborhood, around my block, we have several yards where they are required to have a split rail fence per our covenants. And so that does create more tension. I think those are somewhat normal dog behaviors. I asked some very specific questions to get to the bottom of trying to sort out, is this really a problem with 8 dogs, or is this a problem with if there were only 2? And it seems to me that the problem is actually not with the number. It is a problem with barking. The video that we saw, I did not count 8 dogs. It was a little far away, but I didn't count 8 out there. So I don't think that the problems that are being mentioned are going to be alleviated by not allowing this homeowner to continue to have their dogs. So I am actually not in favor of denying this. I'm in favor of approving this. I would certainly be interested if others do have ideas that are amenable to the property owner, but I'm going to be honest with you. Not only do I think that it meets reasonably the conditions here, but I'm a little frustrated by this rule that we here have at the county. It seems to be a bit arbitrary to pick the number 4, quite frankly. I've known people who have many more dogs than that. I know people who live in the city limits who have 4 dogs and cats. They might have 7 chickens, and maybe they even have a goat. That's permissible underneath city law. And so it seems a bit arbitrary. I don't like arbitrary rules that become the thing that we use against someone when really our problem is something else. And that is what I'm sensing here, and why I feel like not only do I hope that we can take a look at how we are dealing with these situations moving forward and the rules that we have in place, and seeing if we can find rules that are better accommodating, but because this is also underneath the jurisdiction already of the Humane Society, there are already nuisance rules here. There are already ways to deal with barking. Those things can be utilized through the Humane Society. So those tools are already there. And if those tools have not been utilized, and there's not a record of complaints through that formal system that can be utilized, I have a really hard time denying someone a use of their property that, to me, seems to make sense. So sorry to be disagreeable there, but I'm open to hearing what others have to say as well.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to hear. I know that we did purchase a house once that had a dog run on the side of the property. We've never had dogs, but that's why I was pursuing the idea of maybe a dog run or something such as that, because I know that still gives the dogs the opportunity to exercise and be outside with a little less. I mean, no matter what, you're still going to have 4 barking dogs, because that's the rule. So I just am looking for a way to maybe mitigate the problem.
Yeah, and Commissioner Bremer, it looks like you might have an interest in speaking, but just before we go there, to the members of the audience, the public hearing is closed. So this is now deliberation at this point for the commissioners. And Ms. Seglum, I'm sorry. Lori, did you have
Thank you. This is not pertinent to your discussion, but I wanted to let you know that we are working on getting an updated condition 3 on the screen in front of you, because the one that's in front of you is not the one that's in the Planning Commission resolution. So I want to make sure you have the accurate information, but we're working on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is the one that came out of the Planning Commission and does need to mirror what we would approve. Is that correct?
You can approve what the Planning Commission approved, or you can modify it as you see fit, but I want you to know what the Planning Commission approved.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bremer.
Thank you, Lori, for putting that up. So, you know, I appreciate Commissioner Williams' attempt to get to a better solution here, but I also this is a land use hearing, and we have in front of us an application that was initiated by a property owner who wanted to make sure that the rules of the county were being followed whether it's once he realized it or once he was presented with, hey, this is the process if you want to do this. He has gone through these hoops to put together an application, and that's what's in front of us. So a bit of a side issue that isn't entirely a consideration for this, but it was a question I asked of staff when I first saw this agendized. I said, number one, to me, a kennel implies a corporate money-making thing. So I looked into the definitions, I looked into our code, I really did my research on what the special use application was all about. This is our current mechanism for someone to apply for a special use permit. I have made it known that I think the next time we have a code enforcement opportunity to review many things, this is probably a nomenclature change that needs to happen. As well as one of the other questions I asked was, and this is in the spirit of being compatible with a neighborhood, compatible with other land use decisions, compatible with master plans and neighborhoods, you know, is this a number across the county, across the board, or is it a number associated with a lot size or a zoning? And the answer that I was given is no, it's just straight up across the board. And this is why those special use applications exist, for you to come in and have a hearing and make a decision. I think given what I've heard today, I am leaning towards approving this, again, separating nuisance and noise ordinance things from the special use permit land use application that's in front of us. And I do think that there is room for some considerations. I am personally not really wanting to add it to conditions or notations because, again, it's a separate issue. It's a land use application in front of us that I'm inclined to approve at this point. And I think there are other mechanisms to go through, but we have an applicant who put together a land use application, and it's up to us to kind of sort out where one issue starts and another begins. It doesn't mean we don't agree that there might be a problem, but given our criteria of how we consider these and that it's up to us to kind of separate out the issues a little bit, that's where I am right now.
Great. Thank you. And Commissioner Gonzalez, if you have comments, I have some as well. So.
Sure. I was going to add, it's kind of interesting. So when somebody's in violation, they try to get stuff fixed. A lot of times I'm pretty strict on them, but normally that's because I see a case where they're trying to profit and do a lot of stuff on this, and then got away with as much as they could before they were asked to be brought into compliance. I don't see that with this. So I really don't have an issue with approving this. Again, goes back, you do have to have the concern about the nuisance part, and I'm asking you because that's the part that may drive how this vote goes. Even though they're separate, there's that concern for the neighbors, and so I just ask that part be addressed as best possible. So please do that. We want to be good neighbors. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll state up front, my inclination would be to approve this special use permit. And some of my rationale, first of all, I'm a dog owner. We own 2 dogs, and they're small dogs, and they yap. I feel like it is my right to use my property. Now, in some of those situations, and one in particular, I can think of one house that I owned when I was active duty in the military, I did not build a fence to the edge of my property. I built it to a smaller area so that it could be called a dog run. I also built it with a wood fence so that it was almost complete screening, and never had a problem with that. So, some of the interesting things here is what we have as land use policy and what in my estimation should be something that we should proceed and approve, but also action that the residents perhaps can and should take. To the applicant, I think this is important to note. You certainly have some neighbors that are unhappy with what's going on. And maybe there can be statements made about trying to work with each other and so forth and so on. But I would ask that there be an extra effort made on that because sometimes the best way to solve a community problem is for the members of the community to solve it itself. And there are other things that the applicant can do here, and I would ask you to work with your neighbors and see if there's any other choices about how to be a little bit more accommodating. I also will mention, and I did mention it before, I think it's called the Woodmore Improvement Association. They do have a separate right of action. And there was a claim made earlier today that they intend on seeking covenant enforcement action, and that is not before the board today, this board. And I appreciate my fellow commissioners' comments about kind of two separate issues here, one which is numbers of dogs, and the other which is noise. Forcing the numbers of dogs to a smaller number, there's a reasonable chance that would not solve what I think is the preponderance of complaints that came from those that are in opposition to this application. So I think those are really important things, and we'll see how this vote goes. I would be in favor of approving this special use, but as always, I implore the applicant, if it goes that way in a vote, to consider ways to work with the neighbors and find, alternative solutions that can be a little bit easier on everybody in that neighborhood. So those are my comments today. And are there any other follow-on comments from any of the commissioners? All right. Do we need, Commissioner Gonzalez, do we need any correction on the wording? Okay. Commissioner Bremer?
I was just going to do one quick little add-on, which is that, I quickly referenced it, but in going through the criteria, that's not on the screen anymore, I do find it consistent with an acre property as well to have what seem to be well cared for pets, and that's what the code enforcement and the Humane Society comes in when those things are at risk. Again, it's a land use decision, and I find it to be fairly compatible with the surrounding area of slightly larger lots.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Williams? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the last statement. I want to be careful about saying something 8 dogs might be compatible. We may be changing our code here if that's people's. If I don't want to bring additional groups that are not compliant with county code. So I also don't want to set precedent, but I think in this case I'm okay with this, but I also don't want to encourage any violations in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Commissioner Williams.
All right, I will move approval of the application, just stating ahead. I make the motion because I'm the resident commissioner. I am probably going to vote no. But I'll move approval of the application as it stands with the 3 conditions and the 3 notations.
All right, there is a motion to approve the special use for item 7. Is there, and with the stated conditions and notations, I would assume your motion includes that? Yes, okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, that has been moved and seconded. Are there any last questions either for staff or any other points that any of the commissioners would like to make?
I would just ask for clarification, since we have a discrepancy between the conditions on the Planning Commission resolution and the staff report, as to which 3 you would like, and I can try to pull those back up again.
I would move approval of the Planning Commission conditions
Then that's those there.
and notations.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll presume the seconder would agree.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a proper motion and a second. Any last comments or questions? All right, very good. Let's proceed with the vote. Commissioner Williams.
No.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 4-1. And let's see, I think now we will start now with item number 8, unless anybody wishes to take a quick break. No? Okay, let's move on to item number 8.
Item number 8 is the Special District Policies and Model Service Plans Procedures Amendment, a request by the El Paso County Planning and Community Development Department to amend the Special District Policies and Model Service Plans as referred to in Chapter 9 of the El Paso County Land Development Code 2022. The proposed revisions in their entirety are on file with the El Paso County Planning and Community Development Department, file LDC-2-1, Carrie Parsons, Senior Planner, Planning and Community Development.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Carrie Parsons with Planning and Community Development. Before you today, staff is requesting to amend the board's 2007 adopted model service plans and special district policies. Staff provided a very lengthy background of the proposed red line changes, but with permission, Chair, I'd like to highlight those changes in a very brief list, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Overall, one of the major changes to the special district policies would be to allow up to a 15 mil maintenance and operations, where 10 is currently allowed, and that is to enable special districts to take on more of those improvements, such as in terms of maintenance for private roadways, detention facilities. As you have noticed probably in the last few years, we have more special districts coming before the board and asking to take on those responsibilities in lieu of the county taking on maintenance responsibilities for infrastructure such as detention ponds. And again, we don't maintain our own private roads. So the feedback that staff received from the constituents and some of the representing attorneys is that upping that from 10 to 15 would enable those districts to have more funds available for that category. So that is one of the larger changes in the modifications before you today. More specifically, there is no change to the overall maximum. 65 is still that current maximum. And so what that means in a nutshell, I knew that you were going to ask me that, Commissioner. So what that means in a nutshell is that if they were to raise that operation and mill levy up, they would have to come down in the other category so that they had that maximum combined mill levy of 65. Is there any questions on that component?
Any questions on that particular component?
Okay.
And it looks to me like you were anticipating Commissioner Gonzalez's question.
I was. I'm still waiting for him to pull out the calculator, so we'll see. Next, one of the another change to the actual service plan was there was some terminology referring to development services. We are no longer that name, so we've corrected those. We've corrected other typos and grammatical errors from the 2007 plans and policies. We also tweaked the language for material modification to match today's current state statutes. So we removed the notion of a minor modification, which in the past, those minor modifications didn't come before the Board of County Commissioners. In some cases, they were approved by the previous director. However, that wasn't so clear in the state statute, so we cleared that up in this, so it's very clear, material modification, and it does need to come before the Board of County Commissioners, not the Planning and Community Director. Any questions on that?
Any questions on those items? Commissioner Bremer?
No questions, just a quick comment. I'm a words person, and getting the word very precise is important to me, especially in our code or for things that could come before us. So I appreciate the fact that we went from minor major, which is somewhat subjective without any real definition, to, I mean, to me, the new nomenclature is just more clarifying of simple grammatical, non-substantial changes.
Thank you. And I would have to say that I didn't do this alone. Ms. Sego and I worked very closely on these changes over the last year, so I have to give credit to Ms. Sego for helping me through this as well. We let's see here, next, I don't want to repeat myself. We removed the language regarding generalized plan unit developments throughout the documents because we no longer have a conceptual PUD that was eliminated in 2015, and we now have that site-specific PUD, so we've modified the special districts to include that. In addition, we added, Commissioner Williams, we added the concealed carry prohibition language that you had seen your staff continually write those in to the special districts that came before you. So that is now proposed to be a part of the model service plans. In addition, with the removal of, thank you, you're welcome. With the removal of the Gallagher adjustment by vote of the people, we, as a request from the constituents and those frequent flyer attorney firms, we added the assessment rate adjustment and the new definition, which I believe you have seen in the last few special districts, to offset if there was a change in the future as it relates to an assessment rate adjustment, but not as the Gallagher rate adjustment. So that language is now in sync, so you won't have that strike through in the future on staff reports and in the special district policies, removing that Gallagher adjustment language. And then specifically, the model service plans, you have the master service plans, the multiple service plan, and then that single district service plan. So the changes that I am going to read before you apply to the three of them across the board. Some of them, again, are repetitive, so I apologize that, but they were in both places. So again, the nomenclature that I had previously mentioned carries through, and then we added language as a request from the City of Colorado Springs and the Town of Monument that will require any additional inclusion areas to go before the City of Colorado Springs City Council and the Board of Trustees for the Town of Monument. So what that means is if a property goes through a special district and is in unincorporated El Paso County, but then they later wanted to annex into one of those jurisdictions, if they still are within that district, they would have to go before those two bodies were appropriate and make sure that that jurisdiction is aware that they're in a special district. Next, and I believe lastly, we requested and wrote into the model service plans that the applicants now address the development, phasing, and absorption. And so there is a slide that your staff has been presenting to you for the last 2 years, and it was a request of Commissioner Gonzalez about the SOT. And so we have asked those the applicants now to actually make that analysis in those model service plans so that you have that in your backup instead of the day of the PowerPoint presentation is presented to the board. Let's see. And then the very last thing that we included on this was that we revised the annual report and disclosure form to update it with the current elected officials, current county office building, and addresses. We had still previously were using 27 East Fermahoe for the Board of County Commissioners and the clerk to the board, clerk and recorder. So those are now corrected to the appropriate addresses. Things have changed since 2007.
Well, that might be an indicator of how dated it was, right?
Yes, sir. I forgot to add one last thing. In those model service plans, there is a requirement that the applicants address master plan consistency. And since we had changed the master plan, eliminating those small area plans in the county policy plan, in addition to the new adoption of the water master plan, we updated that language so that the old plans were not referenced in those. And that basically summarizes the changes that staff is proposing for you today.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. I'll just start off with mine. Could you refresh the statement again? There was something about concealed carry?
Yes.
Yeah. Explain that to me again. Okay, thank you.
So the issue was when the state legislature said every single district had a right to come up with a concealed carry law. One of the prime examples of a special district in the city that you drive every day is the right side of Nevada going after the Tejon, after the I-25 bridges to the Safeway. That's a special district on the right side because they're using that special district to finance all of their improvements. So theoretically, I know this person who owns this district, he would not do it, but theoretically, the owners of the special district could state, I'm sorry, you may not have a concealed carry in this half a mile. So if you're driving in a car with your concealed carry under the seat or wherever, and you get pulled over, you would be in violation of the law. That's a problem because we're issuing concealed carry permits, and we believe our citizens have the right to use them. And so we're not going to allow a special district in the county, and the city is not going to let Colorado Springs will not allow a special district in the city to regulate the use of our concealed carry permit because it's a fundamental right that we support.
Okay.
And that's the royal we. I support, but I know all of you do too.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate the clarification. I just didn't realize that had been added in or clarified or stated or what have you.
It became an enforcement issue for our sheriff's office as well, sir.
Okay, great.
Are there any other questions?
Other questions from any of the commissioners? Okay. Commissioner Gonzalez, I don't know if you're pulling the mic to make a motion or to make a comment. All right. I don't see any other comments or questions from any other commissioners. I'll entertain a motion for item 8.
I move approval of item 8.
Second.
And that's been moved and seconded. And since I saw no questions, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Item 8 passes 5-0. Let's move on to item number 9.
Item number 9 is department and committee reports, non-action items, and there are none.
Very good. Item 10.
Item 10 is the addendum. There are no addendums.
All right. And item 11.
Item 11 is the executive session. There is no request for executive session today.
Very good. Seeing no further business before this board, this meeting is adjourned.